It started with a dare. The old Northgate Hospital had been shuttered for over 20 years, boarded up, fenced off, and riddled with stories that never made the news. Murders, vanishings, whispered experiments. None of us believed any of it, not really. But when Jacob found an unlocked side entrance during one of our midnight urban explorations, we couldn't resist. We stepped through the rusted door, flashlights casting pale beams across peeling wallpaper and shattered glass. The air smelled like old rot and wet concrete, thick enough to choke on. Every sound, our footsteps, our breath, the soft drip of something unseen, felt like it echoed through the walls. We moved as a group, me, Jacob, Naomi, and Eric. It was Naomi who found the strange patch of wall behind the storage room. The paint was a slightly different shade. It didn't feel right. When Eric knocked, it sounded hollow. We scraped at the plaster, revealing a rusted metal door. No handle, no markings, just a single rectangular slot at eye level. Then it opened. Not all the way, just enough for a burst of stale, frigid air to hiss out. Inside, a set of stone steps descended into complete darkness. Jacob grinned like an idiot. Underground psych ward or something. We have to go down there. I wanted to say no. I should have said no. Instead, I shined my light into the void. The beam vanished after a few feet, swallowed whole, like the tunnel didn't want to be seen. Naomi shivered. Why would a hospital have something like this? Eric looked back. Only one way to find out. We descended one by one. As the door creaked shut behind us on its own, I realized the air down there didn't just feel cold. It felt alive. The first thing we noticed was the silence. Not the kind you get in an abandoned building. This was deeper, heavier. The moment we stepped off the last stair, the sound of our own breathing. Neng felt muffled, like we were underwater. Even the click of Jacob's flashlight against stone didn't echo. The tunnel had swallowed sound the same way it had swallowed the light. The floor was old stone, slick with condensation. Walls lined with what looked like decayed brick and rusted pipe, snaking like arteries overhead. The air was metallic, copper and mold and something fouler, something that clung to the back of your throat. Guys, Naomi whispered, hugging her arms. This place feels wrong. Jacob laughed under his breath, but it wasn't confident. It's just the atmosphere. Hospitals always give people the creeps. We walked, slowly. The tunnel narrowed, then widened again, as if it had been built in parts, like additions stitched together over time. At intervals, there were doors, metal, windowless, bolted shut from the outside. Eric ran his fingers over one. Why would these be locked from this side? No one answered. Then Naomi stopped, her flashlight fixed ahead. Did you hear that? We all froze. A faint shuffle, not echoing, just close, like skin brushing stone. My heart stuttered. Jacob turned his light toward the sound. Nothing. Then it flicked off. So did mine. Then Naomi's. Only Eric's beam remained, flickering, spasming in his hand. What the hell? Something moved at the edge of his light. Just a shadow. A shape. It darted behind one of the doors. We ran. No one said a word. No one needed to. We all felt it. That unmistakable, bone-deep certainty. We weren't alone down here. And whatever was with us had been waiting. We didn't stop running until the tunnel curved sharply and opened into a larger chamber. The air was colder here, the kind of cold that gets inside your teeth. Our flashlights sputtered back on, one by one, without warning, just flickered weakly to life, as if they'd been permitted to work again. Anyone want to leave now? Naomi whispered, arms wrapped tight around herself. Jacob, catching his breath, shook his head. There's no way that was just a shadow. Something's down here. No shit, Eric muttered, scanning the walls. But what kind of something? The chamber looked like some kind of underground ward. Rows of empty beds rusted into the floor, thick leather restraints dangling from metal bars. Some of the beds still had rotted mattresses, blackened with mold. Above each one was a small, shattered mirror. What the hell was this place? I asked, my voice sounding hollow in the dead air. Naomi pointed to the far wall. There's something there. We moved closer. Words were scratched into the brick over and over again. Deep, frenzied gouges into the stone. Don't open the red door. "Don't open the red door. Don't open the red door." Dozens, hundreds. The same sentence etched in desperate, uneven lines. Below them, a set of fingernail fragments were embedded in the grooves. "That's not graffiti," Eric said quietly. "That's carved by hand." We turned as a metallic clang rang out from the hallway behind us, like something heavy had just been dropped. Then silence again. Jacob looked down the tunnel. "It's following us." Naomi's voice trembled. "We need to go back." I glanced toward the tunnel's mouth, already swallowed in black. I didn't say what I was thinking. "I'm not sure we can." We agreed to rest for a few minutes. None of us said it aloud, but we were shaken. The scratching on the wall had done something to us, wound us tighter like strings about to see. Eric paced while Jacob searched the chamber. Naomi stayed close to me, flashlight clutched like a lifeline. I noticed her hands trembling. "There's a door over here," Jacob called softly. "Not red, just black." He pointed toward the far end of the chamber, where a rusted steel door stood slightly ajar. A faint, sour smell seeped out from behind it, chemical, like bleach mixed with decay. Jacob pushed it open with his boot. The room beyond was smaller, some kind of observation cell, lit by a flickering overhead light, the only source of electricity we'd seen so far. In the center of the room was a bed. The straps were intact, so was the thing lying in it. It looked human at first glance, but the proportions were off, limbs too long, skin stretched and dry like old parchment. The head was turned away from us, facing the wall. Naomi stepped back instinctively. "Is that a body?" Eric crept closer. "Maybe taxidermied? A medical dummy?" Then it moved. Just a twitch of the fingers, thin, bone-white digits jerking slightly against the restraint strap. We all froze. Its head turned, slowly, toward us. What we saw shouldn't have been alive. Its eyes were sewn shut with wire. Its mouth stretched into a silent scream, lips stitched together with black thread. The thing began to strain against its restraints. The leather groaned. The metal buckled. Then its jaw began to tear open, stitch by stitch. We slammed the door and ran. Behind us, something shrieked without sound, like a scream that had been waiting decades to escape. We didn't stop running until we couldn't hear the thing anymore. Whatever it was, that silent scream still echoed inside my skull. We stumbled into another corridor, narrower this time. The walls pressed in close like they were breathing around us. The air had changed again, heavier, warmer, and full of sound. Not loud, barely audible really, but unmistakable. Whispers. They came from every direction, soft, slurred voices, like a dozen people murmuring just behind the walls. None of the words made sense, but they carried meaning somehow. Desperation, pleading, rage. Naomi grabbed my arm. "Do you hear that?" Jacob nodded slowly, face pale. "They're talking to each other." "No," Eric muttered. "They're talking to us." We kept moving, flashlights flickering with every step. Ahead, the tunnel opened slightly into a fork, two passageways, each identical in every way except for the smell. The left path reeked of mold and rot. The right path smelled like antiseptic and flowers, roses maybe. But underneath it, faint and wrong, burned hair and iron. "Which way?" I asked. Before anyone could answer, the whispers grew louder from the left, still indistinct, but the tone sharpened, urgent, warning. Then something new, a single word, repeated clearly from the right tunnel in a child's voice. "Help. Help. Help." We turned to the right. There, at the far end of the hallway, stood a child. A little girl in a hospital gown, barefoot. Her skin was pale as chalk, her hair matted with blood. She didn't move, just stared at us. And when Naomi raised her flashlight, the girl was gone. No sound, no shadow, just empty air, and the faint trail of bloody footprints leading deeper into the dark. We followed the bloody footprints, not because we wanted to, but because something about the girl's eyes wouldn't let us turn back. There was a pull to her presence, something unnatural, like gravity, but worse, The prints led down the right-hand tunnel through a rusted metal archway etched with flaking letters. Ward 9B, restricted. Is this really a psych ward? Jacob muttered, shining his light around. No one answered. The air was thicker here, heavy with dust and static. It buzzed in our ears, under our skin. The hallway opened into another room, large, circular, and wrong. The floor was stone again, but polished smooth, almost ceremonial. That's when we noticed the names. Hundreds of them, etched deep into the stone under our feet. Not carved like the message from before. These were deliberate, even beautiful in their symmetry. Each name was followed by a number, a date, and a word. Eliza M. Torrance, 1966. Silenced, Daniel H. Cook, 1974. Submerged, Thomas B. Hale, 1983. Expired, Naomi Fields, 2024. Reserved, Naomi froze. What the hell? She whispered. Her name was there. Same spelling, same year. This year. Jacob backed away. That's not a coincidence. Eric's light flickered again. This place was never just a hospital. I knelt beside the names. The stone was warm under my fingers, pulsing almost, like a heartbeat beneath the surface. Then, from the walls, the whispers rose again. But this time, they were clear. They were reading the names, over and over, until they reached Naomi's, and stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the voices, because something behind us had started breathing. We spun around at once, lights snapping toward the sound. Nothing there, just the tunnel yawning behind us like an open throat. No movement, no breathing, but we all heard it, heavy, wet, like something massive had exhaled right over our shoulders. Naomi was pale, trembling. Her name on that floor had cracked her composure. That's not me, she whispered. It can't be me. But the way her voice quivered said she wasn't sure. We decided to move, fast. No one wanted to stay in the name room any longer. Not with that heartbeat under the stone. Not with the whispers turning our thoughts against us. We followed the corridor that led out of the chamber. It was tighter than before, the ceiling dripping with condensation. Something about the air had changed. Moister now, electric, like a storm was building just ahead. Then we found the mirror. It was bolted to the wall in the center of the hallway. Out of place. Clean. Too clean. Our flashlights passed over it, and Naomi gasped. In the reflection, we were all standing there, but she was different. Her face was twisted, bruised, her lips sewn shut with black thread, just like the thing in the bed. Her eyes, bloodshot and empty, locked onto her real self. No one else's reflection had changed, just hers. Tell me you see that, she whispered. We did. The image in the mirror raised its hand and pressed it flat against the glass. Naomi didn't move, but the reflection smiled. A wide, inhuman stretch of teeth behind shredded lips. Then it mouthed something silently. Soon. The lights flickered and the mirror cracked, webbing from the center out like veins. But Naomi's reflection didn't vanish. It kept smiling, even after we walked away. None of us spoke for a long time. Naomi walked with her arms wrapped around herself, eyes locked on the ground. I didn't know what to say to her. How do you comfort someone who just saw their own stitched mouth smiling back at them? We kept walking. The tunnel sloped downward, subtly at first, but then at a sharper grade. The air grew damper, and with each step, the smell of rust and mildew thickened. The corridor had changed again. Less hospital, more sewer. The walls were lined with thick pipes and drainage grates. That's when we heard it. A dragging sound, wet and slow, coming from beneath the floor. Jacob froze mid-step. What the hell is that? Eric knelt near one of the grates, shined his flashlight through. Water, he said, but something's moving in it. We all gathered, peering down through the rusted iron slats. At first, it was just darkness and water, a slow current moving through a deep concrete channel. Then something pale passed beneath the grate, long, boneless. Naomi jerked back. Did you see that? Jacob nodded, eyes wide. It was crawling on the ceiling of the pipe. We kept walking, faster now, but the dragging sound kept pace beneath us. Then, thud. Something slammed against one of the grates behind us. Metal rattled. We turned. The grate was bent upward slightly, as if something had tried to push through. "Move," I said. "Now." We broke into a run, flashlight beams bouncing wildly. Another slam. Closer. Then a metallic screech, like claws on steel. As we rounded the corner, we passed a large grate. A pale hand shot through, veined, slick, fingers bending the wrong way, trying to grab Naomi's ankle. She screamed. We pulled her back. It reached again, then stopped, as if it knew where we were going. We didn't stop running until we hit another fork, a wide chamber where the air shimmered with heat and something older. The dragging sounds behind us had vanished. The grates were gone now, replaced by solid stone floors and walls that looked carved, not built. Carved by hand or claw. No markings, no numbers, no institutional symmetry. Just raw, ancient stone. And at the end of the room stood a single, imposing structure. The red door. It was unmistakable. Tall, seamless, smooth, glossy red. No rust, no dust, no hinges or handle. Just there, as if it had always been. The light from our flashlights seemed to bend around it. The air buzzed like a constant low vibration that throbbed in our teeth. Naomi whispered, "The wall said not to open it." Eric stepped closer, drawn like a moth. "It's not just a warning," he muttered. "It's a ritual, a binding." I stared at the smooth, polished surface. There were fingerprints on it, countless smudges, pressed hard, fingertips, palms, scratches, like people had tried to claw their way in. "What's behind that?" I asked. Jacob took a step forward. "Or who?" Something inside the stone groaned, not the door, the space beyond it, like it shifted in response to our presence. Then we heard it again, the child's voice, the same one from before, faint, almost gentle. "Don't leave me in here." Naomi's eyes went wide. "That's her, the girl." Jacob stepped forward, placing his hand on the door, and it opened. Not with a creak, with a hiss, like a wound splitting open. A rush of cold air hit us, and something else too. A smell, like blood, ash, and birth. The red door didn't swing or slide. It peeled open. The surface split down the center and curled outward, like flesh unzipping along an old scar. The walls pulsed once, faintly, as if the tunnel itself exhaled. And then the smell hit us. It wasn't just blood and ash. It was centuries. Burned flesh, dead water, something ancient and rotting, long buried and disturbed. Inside the chamber, darkness moved. Jacob raised his light. The beam hit a far wall, revealing stone etched with strange symbols, curved and sharp, like letters that didn't belong in any language. Beneath them, chains hung from the ceiling, frayed and broken. In the center of the room was a cradle, a rusted metal crib covered in thick layers of cobweb and old cloth, crusted with something dark, rocking, barely, back and forth, back and forth. Naomi stepped back. "We shouldn't be here," Eric whispered. "Something was held here, past tense." The whispering began again, but this time it wasn't around us, it was inside us, like dozens of voices crawling into our ears, sliding under the skin. Jacob stepped toward the cradle. "Jacob, don't," I said. He didn't listen. He reached out, and the thing inside the cradle sat up, fast, violent, not like a baby, like something pretending to be one. Its head was wrong, too wide, veined and pulsing. No eyes, just a mouth sewn shut, black thread twisting into the skin, and still, it made no sound. Jacob froze. The thing grabbed his wrist. He screamed. It didn't move, didn't rise, just gripped. Skin blistered instantly under its touch. Eric lunged, pulling him back. The cradle thing didn't resist. It let go, like it was letting him go on purpose. As we dragged Jacob back through the red door, it whispered again. "You opened it. Now it knows." Jacob didn't speak after we got him away from the cradle. He just sat against the tunnel wall, cradling his burned wrist. The skin had turned black in the exact shape of the thing's fingers, 5 perfect lines, pulsing faintly beneath the surface. The burn wasn't just on the outside, it was spreading. Veins near the mark had turned dark, worming up his forearm in slow, deliberate paths. "Does it hurt?" I asked. Jacob didn't answer. His mouth twitched, but he stared ahead, silent and unfocused. Naomi knelt beside him. "Jacob, say something." He blinked, looked at her, then vomited black. Not liquid, smoke. It poured from his mouth in thick curls like ash belched from a furnace. It hit the floor, hissed, and evaporated. Eric jumped back. "We need to leave, now." I nodded, but when I looked behind us, the red door was gone. Vanished, just a smooth stone wall, like it had never been there. Naomi grabbed my arm. "What's happening to him?" Eric knelt in front of Jacob, trying to get through to him. "Hey, listen to me. We need to keep moving." Jacob looked up, and for a second something else looked through his eyes, something ancient, cold, like he was slipping and something else was sliding into his place. He whispered, "It's awake now." Then he laughed, low, wrong, like static over a broken radio. We carried him. The tunnels had changed again, longer, sharper. The air buzzed and pressed in like pressure at the bottom of the sea. It didn't feel like we were under a hospital anymore. It felt like we were beneath the world. And Jacob, he was changing. Not just the wound, his voice, his skin, the way he moved. Whatever touched him in that cradle, it didn't let go. We moved fast, supporting Jacob between us, though he barely seemed aware of it anymore. His body twitched occasionally, like something was testing the limits from inside him. We turned to Co. We're near and stumbled into a new room, if you could even call it that. It was round, impossibly smooth, like the inside of an eggshell. There were no seams, no pipes, no rust, just a massive, polished white chamber. It was too clean, too perfect. Our flashlights barely left reflections, as if the surface absorbed light the same way the rest of this place devoured sound. Naomi froze. "Where are we?" Eric muttered, "I don't think we're under the hospital anymore." There were no exits, just the tunnel behind us. And then the lights died. Every flashlight winked out at once, not a flicker, just off. The dark was suffocating, total. My own breath felt thick in my throat. Then, a sound, not a whisper this time. Breathing, long, slow, wet. It wasn't coming from Jacob. It was all around us. And then a flicker of light, not ours. A glow began to spread across the walls, like veins of soft red under translucent skin. One by one, eyes appeared. Dozens, hundreds, embedded in the walls, unblinking, watching. Some human, some not. Some with too many pupils, some cracked like glass. Naomi screamed. The walls trembled. The room didn't echo. It listened. Jacob stepped forward, unaided, arms at his sides. He turned slowly, eyes wide and distant. Then he whispered, "They remember us." The eyes began to close, all at once, and the floor beneath us opened like a mouth. We fell, not onto ground, onto teeth. We landed hard. But it wasn't stone that caught us. It was soft, wet, pulsing. I gagged the moment I hit it. The surface beneath us felt like flesh, slick and undulating as if it breathed. The air was thick and meaty, like the inside of something alive, and the noise, a low, constant gulping sound, as though the tunnel itself had a throat. Naomi scrambled to her feet, slipping in a viscous fluid that reeked of bile and rot. "We're in something," she gasped. Eric wiped his flashlight lens and flicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing the truth. We were inside a mouth. The floor was a tongue, massive, coated in a thin layer of mucus. The walls were rings of muscle, each lined with jagged, broken teeth, some human, some not. Above us, the ceiling rippled and flexed, glistening with pinkish-red tissue. A throat pulsed at the far end, and it was opening. Jacob stood alone at the center of the tongue, eyes rolled back in his head. The black veins had reached his neck now. His jaw hung slack, drooling thick streams of smoke. "Jacob!" Naomi shouted. "Please, come back!" He didn't move. The throat began to convulse, drawing in air with a sickening wheeze. We were being pulled, not just physically, mentally, emotionally. Like this place was reaching into our memories, our fears, and feeding on them. Eric grabbed my arm. "We have to move, now!" We ran toward the narrow gap at the far end, barely wider than a crawl space. As we reached it, I looked back. Jacob was smiling. Not at us. At the thing beneath him. And something inside it was smiling back. We scrambled into the narrow opening, slick, tight, suffocating. The space barely fit us on hands and knees. The walls were damp, almost organic. Every inch forward was a struggle against slime-coated stone and the knowledge that something behind us had let us go. On purpose. Naomi crawled ahead of me, her breaths coming in sharp gasps. Eric brought up the rear, flashlight clenched between his teeth. None of us spoke. What was there to say? Jacob was gone, or worse, claimed. The tunnel pressed closer. My backpack scraped the ceiling. My shoulders ached, and through it all the air vibrated, low, rhythmic, like a pulse in the stone. The tunnel was alive, watching, listening. We crawled for what felt like forever. Then Naomi screamed. Not loud. There was no room for volume, but it was sharp, desperate. I shoved forward and saw her stopped at a drop-off, a sharp vertical shaft descending into blackness. "I can't go down there," she whispered. "It's moving." I looked. She was right. The shaft throbbed. Its walls pulsed in and out gently, like breathing. Something below was breathing, or waiting. Eric shined his light down. It didn't reach the bottom. We had no choice. I dropped first. The walls squeezed me slightly on the way down, just enough to let me know they were aware. My boots landed in cold, ankle-deep fluid. Naomi followed, shaking. Then Eric. We were in a narrow chamber, half-flooded, walls covered in what looked like veins of black mold. But when I touched one, it twitched. Then we heard it. A whisper, not from the walls, but inside our heads. "It's inside you now." Naomi clutched her chest, eyes wide with terror. "I think," she said. It followed us down. We stood in the knee-deep water, too afraid to move. The chamber was tight and dark, no clear exit, just more of those black, veined growths clinging to the walls like tumors. They pulsed with a dim, reddish glow, almost like they were breathing in sync with us. Naomi gripped my arm. Her skin was ice. "I can feel it," she whispered. "It's inside my head, crawling." Eric turned slowly, his flashlight shaking in his hand. "Something's coming." We heard it before we saw it. Footsteps splashing in the water behind us. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice echoed through the chamber. Jacob's voice. "Guys, wait up." Naomi went rigid. No, he stayed behind. He was gone. I turned toward the sound, and he was standing there at the far end of the chamber. Same clothes, same face. But his eyes were wrong, too wide, too empty. His skin was tight and pale, like something had stretched it over a frame just slightly too large, and his mouth was smiling, but the rest of him wasn't. He stepped forward. "I'm okay now. I got out." I raised the flashlight higher. "What are you?" The thing that looked like Jacob tilted its head. Then it twitched, violently, like a puppet yanked by unseen strings. Its jaw snapped open far too wide, and black smoke poured out. "I said," it whispered, voice now layered with something deeper, ancient. "I got out." Naomi screamed. The walls shuddered. The veined growths began to throb faster, lighting up like nerves. Eric grabbed my arm. "Move! Now!" We ran toward a narrow gap that had appeared behind the growths, like the walls had opened up for us. Behind us, the thing shrieked in Jacob's voice, but what we heard underneath it wasn't human. We bolted through the narrow passage, the screams echoing behind us. Jacob's voice, yes, but twisted, fractured, like something inside him was using sound as a weapon. The corridor twisted like intestines, veering left and right with no logic. The walls were closing in again, slick and veined, and every time we touched them, they pulsed with heat, like veins ready to burst. Then Naomi stumbled. She caught herself, but when she looked down, her hand was coated in blood. Not hers. The wall was leaking. Thick, dark blood seeped through the cracks in the stone. It oozed downward, slow at first, then faster. All around us, the walls began to bleed, veins rupturing with a sickening hiss. Eric's flashlight flickered. It's reacting to us, bleeding because of us. Naomi shook her head, eyes wide. No, not because of us. I turned slowly toward her. She was staring at the wall behind me. The wall is alive. I followed her gaze. Faces, dozens of them, pressing through the blood-slick surface, trapped beneath the skin of the tunnel like insects frozen in amber. Eyes bulging, mouths open in silent screams, hands reaching, fused with the living stone. One face was mine. Not exactly, but close enough to freeze my blood. Eric backed away, nearly falling. This place, it remembers us. It copies us. I stepped toward the wall, horrified and fascinated, and the face opened its eyes. I staggered back. The blood on the floor rose suddenly, rushing down the hall like a wave. We sprinted as it chased us, hot and thick, brushing at our heels. We dove through a door just as the passage collapsed behind us in a spray of bone and fluid. Naomi rolled onto her back, gasping. "I don't think we're just being hunted," she said. "We're being rewritten." We lay on the cold stone floor, soaked in blood that wasn't ours, hearts thundering like war drums. The room we'd landed in was different. Dead quiet. No pulse, no whispers. The air felt still, hollow, like sound didn't exist here. The walls were flat stone, no growths, no veined flesh. Almost normal. Almost. Then Naomi said it aloud. "I think this is the eye of the storm." Eric walked to the far wall and wiped his hand across it. Dust, stone. Nothing moved beneath his touch. But the second he stepped away, the wall changed. Subtly, it warped like heat rippling off asphalt. Then it flickered, like a scream. We looked around and slowly, so slowly, we began to see the truth. The walls were projecting images, not moving video, but hazy frozen frames, hundreds of them, overlapping, phasing in and out like memories, scenes of people, doctors, patients, children, screaming, strapped to gurneys, lying motionless under flickering fluorescent lights, some crying, some grinning wide, unnatural grins, and some were us. There was Naomi, curled in a corner, me, alone in the tunnels, Eric, bloodied and whispering to someone who wasn't there. None of us remembered these moments, but we knew they hadn't happened, not yet. "This place is showing us the future," Naomi whispered. "Or possible futures," Eric muttered. "It's watching us and planning." Suddenly, static filled the air, an invisible hum that vibrated through our skulls. One of the walls began to strobe, violently, images slamming past too fast to process. Then a voice filled the room, not aloud, inside. "Welcome back." All three of us staggered. Our ears bled. The static deepened, forming words. "You were never meant to leave." Then the room began to dissolve. Not collapse, fade, like waking from a dream too vivid to be real. Only this time, the nightmare was just beginning. The walls melted around us, stone dripping like wax under invisible fire. Images smeared and bled into one another, warping into grotesque tableaus. Surgery without anesthesia, mouths sewn open instead of shut, children whispering into jars of teeth. The static deepened into a throbbing hum that vibrated inside our bones. Then the walls reformed. But now, we were somewhere else entirely. Rows of rusted hospital beds stretched into darkness, each separated by thin curtains hanging like damp funeral veils. The smell was unbearable. Decay, formaldehyde, old sweat. A distant rhythmic beeping echoed, too regular, too loud to be real. The beds weren't empty. Some were covered in sheets. Others held things that used to be people, broken, rearranged forms that made no anatomical sense. Limbs where they shouldn't be, faces half melted. One figure had no skin, just muscle and pulsing veins, twitching slightly like it still felt pain. "I know this place," Eric murmured. "From the stories." "What stories?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "The Northgate experiments, the ones they denied. People went missing here, not just patients, volunteers. The government buried it, said the tunnels didn't exist." "They do," Naomi whispered. "And I think the people didn't die." We stepped forward and the curtain beside me fluttered on its own. I pulled it back. The bed was empty, but on the wall above it, scratched deep into the concrete, was a list of names. All first names, hundreds of them. But at the very bottom, written fresh, still wet, was mine. Jordan. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to, because a figure stepped out from the next bed's shadow, wearing my clothes, my face, only it didn't blink, didn't breathe, and when it opened its mouth, it whispered my name. Jordan. It stepped toward me slowly, deliberate, smooth. Everything about it was me, down to the scuff on the left boot, the torn sleeve on my jacket, the half-healed scar above my eyebrow. But its eyes were empty, not blind, not hollow. Hungry. Naomi backed away, pulling me with her. "Jordan, that's not you." The thing cocked its head, then smiled. Not wide, just enough, like it knew something I didn't. Eric raised his flashlight. "Stay back." The doppelganger mimicked his words, same tone, same inflection. "Stay back." Then it lunged. I don't remember deciding to run, I just moved. All three of us tore down the corridor between the hospital beds as the thing behind us gave chase. It didn't scream. It didn't grunt. It just breathed, fast and ragged, closing the distance. We turned down a side hallway. Naomi threw open a rusted door and we burst into what looked like an observation room. Glass windows looking into more padded cells. We slammed the door shut behind us, barricading it with a metal gurney. Then silence. Eric leaned against the wall, panting. "That thing, it wasn't just copying you." "No," I said, staring at the glass. The room beyond was dimly lit. In one of the cells, something moved. Another figure. Naomi stepped beside me. Inside the padded cell stood a woman in a hospital gown. She was thin, trembling, her back to us. When she turned, Naomi gasped. It was her. Same face, same wide, terrified eyes. But her mouth was sewn shut, and across her forehead carved in jagged letters, "Unstable copy, do not release." Then from behind us, glass shattered. My double was already inside the room. The glass behind us exploded inward, shards slicing through the air like razors. My doppelganger stepped into the room, slowly, methodically, unbothered by the debris embedded in its face. Blood streamed from its cheeks, but it didn't flinch. It smiled wider. Naomi screamed. Eric grabbed a metal stool and hurled it at the thing. It hit square in the chest. No reaction. It kept walking. Then it split. Not in half, not torn, peeled, as though it had a zipper beneath the skin. Another shape pushed through its center. Bigger, wet, hairless. A raw version of me, like something in the middle of growing into me. Eric shouted, "Run! Now!" We pushed through the door opposite the one we'd entered from and found ourselves in another corridor, dimly lit by emergency lights that flickered erratically. The ground sloped downward again, always downward. The further we went, the more the hallway changed. The white tiles gave way to obsidian stone. Metal doors turned to uneven slabs of flesh-colored material. The scent of antiseptic faded, replaced by the sulfur stink of something burning from the inside out. And then, we saw it. A tear in the wall ahead of us. Not a door. A literal wound. 3 jagged slashes forming an arch like the tunnel had been cut open. Black, shuddering fluid oozed around its edges. Beyond it was darkness. Not blackness. The absence of all light. It made the air hum. Our skin prickled as we stared into it. Eric hesitated. "That's not part of the hospital anymore," Naomi whispered. "I think it's where all of this comes from." From behind us, a shriek tore down the corridor. My voice, distorted and furious. We had no choice. We stepped through the wound and fell into another world. Falling through the wound was like drowning in oil. There was no light, no air, no sense of direction, only the feeling of being pulled inside out. My skin felt too tight, my heartbeat skipped and doubled, and for a moment I wasn't sure I existed in a body anymore. Then we hit the ground, hard. The air was dry, too dry. It burned in my throat as I gasped for breath. The 3 of us, me, Naomi, and Eric, lay sprawled in the dust of an impossible landscape. Above us there was no sky. Just endless black, veined with glowing cracks like lightning frozen in glass. Naomi pushed herself up, trembling. "Where are we?" Eric turned slowly, scanning the space. "We're still in the hospital," he said quietly. "But not our hospital." He was right. We were standing in a mirror of the place we'd come from, but twisted, reversed. The walls leaned in at strange angles, doors opened into nothing, and the floors pulsed like skin stretched too tight over bone. The layout was almost the same, but off, like someone had dreamed it wrong. Shadows moved here without cause, and worse, some of them had mass, weight, shape. Naomi pointed. "Look." Far down the corridor, a shape moved, tall, thin, almost humanoid. Except it slid instead of walked, its feet never touching the floor. It turned its head. We froze. It had no face, only a smooth expanse of skin where eyes, nose, and mouth should be. But it saw us. I could feel it in my skull like pressure behind the eyes. And then it started coming. Slow, certain, not running. It didn't have to. It knew we had nowhere left to go. We ran. Even though it wasn't chasing us in the traditional sense, no screaming, no pounding footsteps, there was something so inevitable about its approach that running felt like instinct, like survival. But the hallway fought us. The walls shifted, stretching outward like elastic. Doorways collapsed, floors tilted and pulsed beneath our feet, like organs waking from anesthesia. We kept moving, dodging around rusted beds and swinging lights that moved on their own. Behind us, the faceless thing slid forward. Effortless, patient. We turned a corner and slammed into a door, a huge one, made of riveted iron, carved with the same symbols we'd seen near the cradle. I tried the handle, locked. Eric threw his weight against it, still locked. Naomi stared at the door. Her lips trembled. "These symbols, I've seen them before. In dreams. In my dreams. What do they mean?" I asked. She shook her head. "They're not words. They're instructions." Eric raised his flashlight. "For what?" Before she could answer, the faceless thing rounded the corner behind us. It didn't rush. It simply stopped and lifted its hand. Its fingers stretched too far, bone pushing through skin, and it pointed at me. My vision went white. I saw flashes, memories that weren't mine. Needles pushed into eyes, a man in a white coat whispering, "She's compatible," a diagram of a tunnel that led below the hospital and beyond. I staggered, nose bleeding. The thing hadn't touched me, but it didn't have to. It was showing me. Naomi suddenly grabbed my hand, then slammed her palm under the center of the iron door. The symbols flared, red and angry. The door screamed as it opened. We dove inside and slammed it shut behind us. The faceless thing didn't follow. It didn't need to. It had already left something inside us. The door sealed behind us with a deep, wet thump, like muscle clamping shut around bone. Darkness again, but not total. This chamber had a faint red glow, like coals buried just beneath the surface. The walls were lined with shelves, thousands of them, reaching impossibly high into a curved ceiling we couldn't see. Each shelf held jars, some clear, some frosted over, each labeled with a strip of yellowed parchment, scrawled names in faded black ink. Most of the jars held things, not organs, not quite, but pieces of people. Eyelids, teeth, strings of hair. In some jars, fingernails floated like flower petals, and in others, tiny, half-formed faces pressed against the glass, mouths frozen in silent screams. Naomi moved closer to a shelf. "These are people," she said. "Pieces of them." "Memories," Eric whispered. "They're archiving us." I found one with a name I recognized. Dr. Howard Clemens, a physician who'd vanished from this hospital in 1962. His jar held only a tongue, long and twisted like a root pulled from rotten soil. And next to it, a fresh jar, still warm, condensation streaked the inside, and on the label, Naomi Fields. She staggered back, shaking her head. No, that's not." Inside the jar, a tiny replica of her face drifted slowly in the fluid. Its eyes opened suddenly, mouth moved, though no sound came out. Naomi screamed and knocked the jar to the ground. It didn't shatter. It sank into the floor, swallowed whole. The shelves began to move, slowly rotating around us like a carousel of horror. Whispering began again, dozens of voices, speaking not to us, but about us, recording us, cataloging our thoughts. Then one shelf split open, and something stepped out. Not a copy, not a ghost, something unfinished, with my eyes. And it said, in my voice, "You were always meant to stay." It stepped from the shelf like it had been grown there, stitched together from pieces that almost fit. Its body was raw and pink, slick with some translucent membrane that clung to its frame. Bones jutted at odd angles beneath wet skin. It moved like it wasn't used to walking, jerky, animalistic. Yet its eyes, my eyes, perfect copies, staring straight through me. Naomi backed away, trembling. "What is that?" Eric raised the flashlight, but it fizzled, flickered, and died. The glow from the walls was all we had now, and even that began to pulse, as if reacting to the thing's presence. It spoke again. "You left the door open." Its voice wasn't just mine. It was layered with others, like the voices of all the people who'd ever been pulled into this place, spliced into one unnatural sound. I reached for the closest object, an old metal tray from the shelf, and swung. It caught the thing in the shoulder. Its flesh tore with a wet snap, but it didn't scream. It just smiled and said, "Now you're incomplete." Suddenly, pain shot through my side. I looked down. A scar I didn't have an hour ago was bleeding, deep, fresh, like something had taken part of me without my knowing. I dropped to my knees. Eric charged the thing, knocking it backward into the shelves. Jars toppled, some shattering. Finally, their contents writhed across the floor in twitching heaps, fingers, jaws, little pieces of souls. Naomi pulled me up. "We have to go, now." The shelves began to collapse inward, like they were folding back into the wall. The unfinished thing dragged itself from the rubble, whispering as it bled, "You are not leaving whole." We bolted through a doorway that hadn't been there before, and the moment we crossed it, everything changed. The moment we passed through the threshold, the world shifted. We weren't in the archive anymore. We were in a hospital hallway, but not like any we'd seen before. It looked normal, clean. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, white tile floors, pale green walls, familiar, too familiar. But something was off. The hallway seemed to stretch forever, repeating itself. Same gurney every 10 feet, same blood-speckled ceiling tile, same discarded clipboard with no writing, no doors, no windows, just hallway. Naomi whispered, "We've been here before." Eric nodded slowly. "I don't remember walking it, but yeah, I feel it." The lights buzzed louder. Then we heard it. Footsteps behind us. Measured. Bare feet on tile. Slap, slap, slap. We turned, expecting to see something monstrous. But it was a little girl, maybe 7 years old, thin, pale. Her gown was hospital issued and smeared with dirt. Her face was stitched where her mouth should be, like so many others we'd seen. But she wasn't bleeding. She wasn't crying. She was pointing. Behind her, the hallway bent in a way no hallway should, like a spiral trying to suck itself inside out. Something was slithering there, huge, slow. The girl walked toward us. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a single yellowed piece of paper. She handed it to Naomi, then touched her hand, softly, deliberately. Naomi looked at the paper. Her breath caught. It's my handwriting. The note read, "If you see her again, don't look away. She's not what she seems, but she's not your enemy." Eric looked past her. The slithering thing was getting closer, a shape that didn't obey geometry. It peeled the ceiling as it moved. The girl turned and walked toward it. She never looked back. The thing let her pass. And that's when we realized. We were being watched by something much, much older. We stood frozen, watching the itched-mouthed girl disappear into the spiral. The creature behind her loomed impossibly large, its form hidden beneath flickering lights and a haze of memory that wasn't ours. But it didn't follow her. It stopped and turned toward us. There was no face, only a shifting surface of reflected memories, our memories. I saw my mother's face, twisted in fear, Naomi's younger self, crying in a hospital bed, Eric standing in a basement, holding something too heavy to lift, faces we'd never shown anyone, moments we never spoke of. It knew them. It wore them. Naomi gripped my arm. It's feeding on who we are. Eric took a shaky breath. Or worse, who we were supposed to be. The hallway began to twist. Not visually, physically. The walls bent inward like they were folding into a funnel, dragging us toward the spiral's mouth. The air thickened. We could hear it breathing again, no longer hiding. It wanted us. But the girl's note echoed in my mind. Don't look away. So I didn't. I faced the creature and walked toward it, one step at a time. Naomi called my name, but I raised a hand to stop her. The closer I got, the more I could hear it. Not in words, in feelings. It was old, trapped, hungry. But it wasn't evil. It wasn't even angry. It was lonely. I stopped inches from the spiral, and it stopped moving. Behind me, Naomi whispered, "What do we do?" I reached out, trembling, and touched it. It didn't consume me. It opened. A hole tore into the wall beside us. A tunnel, but not made of flesh, not stone, just void. A chance. But we had to decide now. Go forward, or stay with the thing that remembered everything we'd ever been. I stared into the tunnel the spiral had opened. It was nothing, pure black, not even the glimmer of light reflecting off walls or floor. Just endless absence. No sound, no pulse. It felt wrong, but less wrong than everything else we'd passed through. Naomi stepped up beside me. "This isn't an exit." "No," I said. "It's a passage." Eric stood back, glancing behind us. "That thing's not chasing us anymore. Why? Why help us?" I turned to the spiral. The creature's surface rippled again. I saw flashes, Jacob's face, the cradle, the red door, my own double whispering truths I didn't want to believe. Then I saw Naomi, but not as she was now, hooked to wires, tubes in her arms, eyes fluttering like she was dreaming. And suddenly I understood. "We're still down there," I whispered. "Still in the hospital. We never left." Naomi's face went pale. Eric's voice cracked. "This is all part of it, isn't it?" The spiral pulsed again, slow, steady, like a heartbeat. We weren't being chased anymore because we'd passed the test. Or maybe we were simply too far in to turn back. Naomi took my hand. Eric stepped up, nodding. Without another word, we entered the tunnel. The void swallowed us instantly. No sense of motion, no gravity, just a deep, low hum in the center of our skulls that grew louder with every step. Then, light, a pinprick, far ahead, cold, blue. We ran, and then we burst through. But we weren't in the hospital. We were standing in a laboratory, modern, sterile, and real. Screens blinked, machines hissed. People behind glass stared at us like we were lab rats. A speaker crackled overhead. "Subject breach confirmed. Initiate lockdown." And from every speaker in unison, "Welcome back to Phase 2. Alarms blared. Red lights strobed across the lab, casting everything in a violent, pulsing hue. Men and women in hazmat suits scrambled behind reinforced glass, shouting commands we couldn't hear. Thick blast doors slammed shut behind us. Naomi backed into me, shaking. "This isn't rescue. This is containment." Eric stared upward, stunned. "They knew we were down there. They've been watching us." A woman's voice came through the ceiling speakers again, this time calm, clinical. "Subjects 3, 5, and 6 have returned from the tunnel network. Begin integrity assessment. Prepare re-isolation chamber." I stepped forward, pounding on the glass. "Who are you? What is this?" A figure approached on the other side, mid-40s, silver hair, clean white coat. No badge, no name. She pressed a button. A speaker popped. "You were never supposed to reach the cradle," she said, voice flat. "What the hell is the cradle?" Eric demanded. The woman's expression didn't change. A point of origin, then a wound in the skin of reality. She studied us like specimens. "You were exposed. You've crossed thresholds no unmodified mind should cross. You brought it back with you," Naomi whispered. "Brought what back?" From behind us, the wall hissed. A metal panel slid open. Jacob stepped through. But it wasn't Jacob. Not really. His body was whole again, clean and dressed in hospital scrubs. No burns, no black veins. But his eyes were hollow. He smiled. The woman behind the glass nodded. "We reconstructed him. The infection used him as a seed. It's inside all of you now." Naomi stumbled. Eric doubled over, clutching his chest. And in my head, the whispers started again. Only now, they weren't just whispering. They were calling my name, over and over. "Jordan, Jordan, Jordan." The whispers weren't just in my head anymore. They were under my skin. Each syllable vibrated in my bones, like something ancient had rooted itself deep inside me and was now trying to push upward, toward the surface. Naomi collapsed beside me, clutching her stomach. "It's moving," she gasped. "I can feel it crawling inside me." Eric stumbled toward the glass, blood running from one ear. "We're not infected. You did this to us." The woman on the other side of the glass didn't flinch. Her voice came through the speaker again, calm and void of remorse. "You were chosen. Volunteers. You agreed. The tunnel doesn't show itself to just anyone. It selects." I shook my head. "No, we didn't agree to this. We found the tunnel. We weren't even supposed to be in that wing." The woman leaned closer. "Exactly." Then she stepped aside. Behind her, monitors flickered to life. Footage played. Security cam feeds. Of us. Me, Naomi, Eric, all of us, walking through the abandoned hospital corridors. Weeks before we ever entered the tunnel. Sitting in rooms we didn't remember. Talking to doctors we didn't recognize. Signing consent forms. Our memories. Edited. Naomi stared at the screens, pale. "That's not possible." "They broke us first," Eric muttered, horrified. "Before we even knew what they were doing." The woman continued. "You've been inside the tunnel for months. What you remember is fragments. The infection replays moments, shapes them into stories, symbols. That's how it learns. She pressed a button. The floor beneath us hummed. Phase 2 isn't a test, she said. It's harvest. You're awake now. That means the process is complete. Behind us, the wall cracked open again. Not metal this time, flesh. And something with my voice whispered, "Let me out." The wall behind us split open like a wound, not tearing but parting, smooth and wet, flesh pulled aside by invisible hands. Inside it was darkness, deeper than before. And from within that dark, something stepped forward. It was me. But not the doppelganger, not the unfinished thing. This one was perfect. Same face, same voice, same memories, only one difference. He smiled like someone who belonged. Naomi crawled back against the wall. "Jordan, don't. I'm not doing anything," I whispered. The other Jordan looked at me, not like a copy looks at an original. No confusion, no hesitation, recognition. It spoke softly. "I've been growing. You shed me in the cradle. I'm what came after." Eric lunged at it, trying to tackle it, but the other Jordan caught him, barehanded, with a grip that didn't bend or strain, just held. Eric screamed, and his skin rippled, like something inside him responded. Then he collapsed. The other Jordan let him fall and turned back to me. "You opened the door. You kept going. You saw too much, remembered too little. That's what we needed." The woman behind the glass didn't intervene. She watched, her face stone. Naomi stood barely, her legs shaking. "If it's part of you, can you stop it?" I stared into its eyes. I saw myself, every failure, every weakness, every moment of fear that broke something deeper than bones. "No," I said. "I can't." The other Jordan smiled again. "But you can let me in." It held out its hand. The whisper in my head was no longer distant. It was inside my mouth. "Let me out," it whispered through my own lips. And I realized I already had. My other self stepped closer, his hand still extended, calm, steady, no threat, no violence. He didn't need force. He had intention. Naomi grabbed my arm. "Jordan, don't. Whatever it is, it's still you, but it's not you." "I know," I whispered, but part of me didn't want to stop it. The silence in the room thickened. Even the alarms had ceased. The red lights now pulsed in time with our breathing, and somewhere deeper in the walls, a low, endless chant began to echo, hundreds of voices whispering in unison. "Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back." The other Jordan's hand twitched, fingers flexing like muscle memory. His skin had begun to peel in strips from the edges of his mouth, revealing nothing underneath. No teeth, no bone, just space. Naomi took a shaky step forward. "Why show us this? Why bring us back at all?" The answer came not from him, but from behind the glass. The woman in the lab coat. She leaned into her mic again. "Because the infection doesn't want to be alone anymore. You're not its prisoners. You're its blueprint. It was never trying to kill you. It was trying to become you." I stared at the other Jordan. He didn't move, because I had to. I understood now. The tunnel, the cradle, the spiral, the doppelgangers. None of it was random. We had been mapped, copied, replicated. Naomi reached into her coat and pulled out something, an old, rusted surgical mirror from one of the earlier rooms. She held it up between me and my double. The reflection didn't match. His eyes were black. Mine weren't. The other Jordan's smile cracked. He screamed. The mirror shattered. And suddenly, so did everything else. The mirror exploded into 1,000 splinters, each shard reflecting a different moment, a different version of us. One showed Naomi with stitched eyes, another, Eric strapped to a gurney, mouth sewn open, and one showed me, back au chemin towed, and the tunnel entrance, hesitating, but there was no time to make sense of it. The moment the mirror broke, the lab began to disintegrate, not collapse, unravel, like we were inside something woven, and the threads had been pulled. The walls split open, revealing flesh beneath drywall. Machines screamed like animals. The air turned viscous, hard to breathe, like we were inhaling someone else's memory. The other Jordan convulsed, staggering backward, his body cracked, veins pulsing black under his skin, leaking light that wasn't light at all, but pure wrongness. Naomi dragged me away. "We need to move, now!" Eric, still alive somehow, crawled to his knees. "The void," he choked out. "Get to the void again, it's the only way out." "Where?" I shouted. He pointed to the far corner of the lab, where the wall had folded inward like paper curling in fire. Through it was darkness, not the oily black of the spiral, but something quieter, more ancient. Behind us, the other Jordan let out one final breath. A burst of whispers escaped his chest like steam under pressure, rushing across the room and slamming into us. For a moment, I saw everything. The original facility, buried beneath the hospital. The first breach. The doctors who thought they could contain something born before memory, and how the infection was never a creature. It was a place, a sentient, shifting reality that only wanted to be remembered, and now it had us. Forever, unless we ran. We dove into the breach, not knowing if it was salvation, or the final layer of the trap. We fell again. No gravity, no time. Just sensation, the cold touch of something watching, not from above or below, but from inside. I thought we'd landed somewhere real, maybe back in our world, but when my eyes adjusted, I realized this place wasn't new. It was beneath. We were standing in a chamber of living architecture, walls of pulsing tissue and sinew, lit by a soft internal glow, like fireflies floating in blood. The ground beneath our feet throbbed gently, like a heartbeat keeping time. Naomi stepped forward. Her voice was hollow. "I think this is the center." Eric groaned, still weak but standing. "The cradle?" "No," I said. "Worse." The whispers were gone now, replaced by something deeper, not words, not sound, a feeling, like the universe had left a scar here, and we were standing inside it. We walked forward, drawn without choice. As we moved, the walls shifted, not violently, more like they recognized us. Images rose from the tissue like bruises forming in real time. Our memories, but wrong, rewritten. I saw myself as a child, sitting in a hospital room that never existed, whispering to an empty crib. Naomi saw her mother with no face. Eric saw a mirror with no reflection. This place was made of everything we had forgotten, or tried to. And then we saw it. A massive, beating mass at the far end of the chamber, like a cocoon or heart, wrapped in black threads and twitching veins. Inside, we could see something moving, shifting, waiting. Naomi whispered, "That's what it's building." Eric shuddered. "That's not a body, it's a vessel." It wasn't trying to escape the tunnels. It was trying to become something it could send out, into our world. The cocoon pulsed harder the closer we came. Sick, rhythmic thuds echoing across the living floor. It was suspended above the ground by thick cords of meat and wire, like veins that had grown through. GH forgotten technology. Inside, we saw something forming. Not human, not alien, but us, all of us. A composite. Limbs like Eric's, Naomi's mouth, my eyes, open and watching. It was trying to build a shape that could survive outside. Naomi clutched my arm. "It's not just copying us anymore, it's blending us." "It's learning how to pass," Eric said, "how to hide in plain sight." We circled the cocoon slowly. Symbols pulsed beneath the membrane, sigils we'd seen scratched into the tunnel walls, now moving like worms under skin. It spoke, not in language, but through the air itself. "You left me here." All three of us turned. "You opened the tunnel and forgot." The voice came from everywhere. The walls, the blood, the thing inside. Naomi's face drained. "This isn't the first time we've been here." I felt it too. Shards of memory slamming into place. We had come before. We were the first breach. Whatever we were back then, we hadn't escaped. We'd been absorbed, reprocessed, reused. That's why the copies were so good. Because they were us, broken into pieces and fed back into the system. Eric staggered forward. If we destroy it, does it end? The cocoon twitched, and from inside it, our voices cried out, "Please, don't let us be born." Naomi raised a piece of shattered mirror she'd kept, its edge sharpened. The cocoon shivered. "Do it," I whispered, "before it becomes something real." She drove the glass into the heart of the cradle. It screamed, and the entire world began to come apart. The scream wasn't sound. It was memory. Every scream that had ever echoed through those tunnels, every whisper, every sob, every name carved into the walls, poured out in a wave of unbearable remembrance. The cocoon split open. Light erupted from it, not white or warm, but void light. A light so pure it erased shadows and identity. It washed over us like fire that didn't burn the body, only the soul. I felt pieces of myself, real ones, get torn away. Moments I couldn't name, faces I barely recalled. Me. And then, silence. We were standing in the old hospital basement. No tunnels, no flesh walls, no spiral, just concrete, dust, and rusted gurneys. Sunlight filtered faintly through boarded-up windows. Birds outside, distant traffic. The real world. Naomi was beside me, Eric too, breathing, staring. We looked at each other. We were here. We were us. But something was missing, and something else was still with us. None of us spoke of what we saw when the cocoon broke, but we all felt it, that presence, that echo, like a seed buried too deep to dig up. We left the hospital in silence. No one stopped us, no sirens, no security, just a boarded-up ruin like it had always been. 3 weeks passed. Naomi's reflection stopped matching her expression. Eric forgot his sister's name, but remembers dreams she was never in. And me? Sometimes I wake up standing in front of the mirror, whispering a name that isn't mine. And my reflection? It always smiles just a second too late. We destroyed the vessel. We stopped the birth. But we didn't walk out whole. We walked out carrying something. And whatever it is, it's learning to pretend it's human.